Hello friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story where OP, after finding out his company wouldn't pay out his 55 hours of unused PTO when he quit, decided to get clever. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Won't pay out my PTO? Well, can I take PTO and work? At my last job, I gave them notice and had assumed they'd cut me a check for the 55 hours of PTO I had left over. But no, they said I would lose it if I don't use it. So I went ahead and used my PTO for the last 55 hours I was scheduled to work because I wasn't about to waste that. But then I remembered a time a few weeks back. I'd taken my PTO, but then had worked about 30 minutes into my PTO. I ended up earning time and a half, as with my PTO plus 30 minutes of extra work. I enjoyed my coworkers. I wasn't working, so I sent an email to my manager. Hey Mark, I know we're a bit understaffed, and I know I took PTO already, but I wouldn't mind working anyway. Is that okay to work? Mark responds, yes, we'd be happy to have you. My hourly rate was $25 at that point. Time and a half puts me at $37.50, which I was fine with earning. So come my second hour of Thursday, I'll be earning time and a half. So I worked, had fun. Come Monday after my last day, my old boss calls me and says, did you work 135 hours last pay period? No, I worked 80 hours and used 55 hours of PTO. 'Cause your overtime pay put us over budget. I said, yeah, that sucks. You did say I was good to work despite the fact that I'd scheduled PTO, right? Him. I did. Yeah, thanks. He starts laughing. Yes, I got paid. Company now pays out PTO when you quit because of me. In the end, they paid me $2,062 in overtime pay, plus the 80 hours I worked earned me $2,000. So typically, 80 hours of work would cost them $2,000, but because they wouldn't pay me out my PTO, they just ended up paying double when they could have just cut me a check for $1,375 and saved $700. Essentially, in their effort to rip off my benefit, I made them pay $700 for their greed. I made sure to get permission to come to work despite the fact that I already had scheduled my PTO. FYI, previously in another interaction, I was told once PTO is approved, it can't be canceled. Edit. In my state, not paying out for PTO is perfectly legal and fine. In my company, PTO is treated in terms of pay the same as hours worked. So in a bi-weekly pay event, I'm scheduled to work 80 hours, 40 hours per week. I noticed if overtime pay went above 40 hours, I still got paid time and a half. So here's the math. I was supposed to work 80 hours. I had 55 hours of PTO to use. So I took all of that, which meant I was going to work 25 hours and take off 55 hours. Now, instead of taking those 55 hours, I worked them. But I was still using PTO, so I got my $25 for my 80 hours, and then I got $37.50 per hour for my 55 hours. This resulted in a gross pay of $4,062. Had the company wrote me a check for my PTO, that would have been $1,375, plus my 80 hours would have been $2,000 for a total of $3,375. So the company basically paid me $700 more than they could have because they were trying to be greedy. That's a lot of money. But the real cost was losing a good employee. And our second story. I don't know where your rental is. I'm just enjoying my coffee. This happened in the spring of 18. My mother had traveled abroad to visit one of her relatives, so when she was flying back, I went to get her. We live about 3 hours away from the airport. Because our oldest was recovering from a stomach bug, hubby decided to stay home with the kids, and I would get my mother and bring her home. My mother's flight was scheduled to arrive at 13:15, but when I got there, I found out they had a 2-hour delay and I had to wait. I thought, all right, I'll enjoy a coffee while I wait, and notified my husband. The weather was good, low 20 Celsius, with no clouds, and decided to have my coffee on the outside patio of a coffee shop. I grabbed my tablet, and because the airport's a bit windy, a yellow windbreaker, and apparently that was my problem. I was reading my book on my tablet, enjoying my coffee, wearing my yellow windbreaker when I heard a, "Hey you." I didn't think it was directed at me and continued reading. Then I feel someone looming above me and, I'm talking to you. I looked up to see a man looking down at me. The following exchange happened. Cast. Me, duh. Husband equals entitled a-hole. Karen, entitled a-hole's wife. PO1 and PO2 equal police officers. Me. Yes. Husband. Where's my rental? Thinking that he was asking where the rental companies had desks, I replied that they were on the other side of arrivals area. Husband. Okay, be a good employee and bring it here. Me. I will certainly not do that. I don't work for the rentals. Husband. Yes, you are. Now go and get it. Me. No. The thing goes back and forth like we're 4-year-olds when Karen inserts herself in the conversation. Karen. Honey, what takes so long? Husband to Karen. The employee here doesn't want to bring our rental. Karen comes and grabs my windbreaker's lapel and put her face uncomfortably close to mine. Karen. Listen, you little bee. Me and my husband are very good clients. I don't care if you're on your break, but if you don't bring the car in 3 minutes, we'll get you fired. Me, extremely PO'd at that point. Listen, bee, take your paws off me or we'll have trouble. Karen. Oh, you threaten me? Me? Oh, you're getting so fired. At that point, she swings her arm, hitting the coffee, spilling it on the table, missing the tablet, and on me. Me standing up. F off, bee. Go find your own effing rental. Karen at that point slapped me while her husband was screaming obscenities. I flipped and slapped her back, which initiated a fight. When the initial argument began, a couple of bystanders had taken notice. The shouting had attracted a crowd, and when the fight started, somebody called the cops. 2 officers came and separated us. PO1. What happened? Husband. The employee refused to help us and then attacked my wife. Me. I don't work here, you dip crap, and your wife attacked me. PO2. Madam, language, please. Karen. I want to press charges. PO1. Okay, all of you are coming with us. We ended up on the airport police station. One officer went to get the manager of the rental company, and the other reviewed the tapes with his boss. The rental company manager verified I wasn't an employee. They wear white shirts and black ties and a lanyard with their access ID. I was wearing a CT Hulu t-shirt and jeans. The cameras verified the attack. I pressed charges and left to get my mother. Did you ever find out if she was actually important to anyone but herself? Also, that's one way to avoid boredom. And our last story. My neighbor keeps calling the police because of leaves from my tree. I bought my house last December and I have a crazy Karen as a neighbor. My neighbor will call the police if any leaves from my tree or any grass blades from me cutting my grass go into her yard. Yes, she stands out there and watches me cut the grass. Last week, we talked to one another with the police officers present so we can try and work something out. Basically, the moment she sees a leaf in her yard, she gets PO'd. I told her I'm not home all the time to constantly monitor every single effing leaf that falls from my tree. Oh, the tree's on the opposite side of the yard from her? My yard's not littered with leaves, and the police even said that my yard looks fine, but she persists on calling the police out every time anything comes into her yard. I've done my research on the situation, as dumb as I think it is, but once a leaf falls from a tree, I'm not liable for what happens to it. That's what the internet articles say, at least. Edit. I'll give a little more information about the past few months. Within a month of moving into the house this past December, I was out back after dark. It was no later than 8 p.m., breaking down some boxes that we had left over from moving. I took a quick break from breaking them down, and I see this hand throwing trash into my yard over the fence that separates our yards. I couldn't believe it. Up until this point, we had one interaction with one another, and that was when we were both outside shoveling the snow. I introduced myself, and she introduced herself, and immediately warned me that she likes to call the police on anything she sees wrong in the neighborhood, basically bragging about it. From that greeting to the trash being thrown into my yard, no interactions with one another. I bought a security camera system shortly after that to see how often she does it. We had bits and pieces of trash in our backyard shortly after moving in, and it was always on one side of the yard that was up against her fence. We just thought that it was whatever trash that the wind had picked up and would stop at the fence, and we'd pick it up whenever we'd see it. Within 3 days of having the cameras, she's doing it again and is on camera doing it. I waited for it to happen on 3 more occasions. After the second time I had it on video, anytime I saw her outside when I was outside, I tried to say hello and talk to her about it, but as soon as I said hello, she would go inside. After the third time of throwing trash into my yard and being unsuccessful at talking to her about it, I called the police. There was no reason for her to be throwing trash into my yard. The police gave her a warning. The trash in our backyard that we thought was getting blown there stopped as well. Crazy. After that, I'd been nothing but nice to her and would say hello whenever I saw her. I don't really want to have problems, but I had to do something about the trash being thrown into our yard. Anytime I'd say hello, I would get ignored. She even went as far as to say that she was going to charge me with harassment if I didn't stop. What? Last week, the police came out again for leaves in her yard. He suggested that we talk to one another while he was there to listen. She explained herself. She thinks that we're not maintaining our property well and is upset that we aren't outside to pick up every leaf that falls from our tree and doesn't want any grass clippings blowing into her yard. The police officer looked over at my yard and looked back at her and said there's nothing wrong with my yard and that it looks better than a lot of properties in our city. She said that she bought her house that doesn't have a tree because she didn't want to clean up leaves. Newsflash, every house on our block has a tree except for hers. She just wishes that we would take care of our yard better. Again, the police officer enforced to her that according to city law, our yard was fine. We agreed with each other that if we have any problems with one another, that we would talk to each other first before getting the police involved. 8 days later, she called the police again for grass and leaves being in her yard. As far as I could tell, there wasn't any grass left behind. And when I mean in her yard, I'm not saying it's in the middle of her yard. It's mere inches from where our yards meet in her yard. This time, the policeman got angry and said it was illegal because she was abusing emergency services. Next time, she'd be arrested. Not sure if it would work, but at least she was threatened. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.